U.S. campaigning heats up just days before the election. In the UK, the first black Conservative Party leader. And Israeli troops capture what they call a senior Hezbollah operative in northern Lebanon. Hello, happy Sunday. This is TVB News. In the U.S., the two presidential candidates rallied in several cities and battleground states where the November 5th election may be decided. Republican candidate Donald Trump continued to hit out at the immigration policies of his rival, Democratic nominee Kamala Harris, while Harris warned voters that Trump is only after unchecked power. Harris also said this election is one of the most important in U.S. history. With 75 million votes already cast, many voters agree with her. Nazvi Karim has more.
They are voting in Massachusetts. Michael Hardinger is a dual U.S.-Danish citizen, and he's voting not just for America, but for the world.
In my opinion, and many in Europe, one of the most important elections in U.S. history. And in Europe, and I guess all over the world.
In New Hampshire, they feel the same.
Quite honestly, I always told my dad that one election to another, your life's not really going to change much. But I think this one is different. I think it's a scary election.
Harris campaigned in Atlanta, Georgia, and her backers are scared that Trump will become a dictator.
All right, Georgia, so we have 3 days left. 3 days in one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime. This is someone who is increasingly unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and the man is out for unchecked power.
Trump supporters are scared that Harris will allow America to be invaded by immigrant criminals.
If they don't have me, they got millions of people pouring through and coming up to the suburbs. They say the suburban women. Well, the suburbs are under attack right now. When you're home in your house alone and you have this monster that got out of prison, he's got, 6 charges of murdering 6 different people.
That was in Gastonia, North Carolina. Trump stayed in the state for a rally in Greensboro, where he doubled down on his immigration stance.
The United States is now an occupied country. Can you imagine having to say, we're an occupied country? But it will soon be an occupied country no longer. On November 5th, 2024, it will be Liberation Day in America. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history.
Harris was also in North Carolina, accompanied in Charlotte by actress Kerry Washington and rocker John Bon Jovi.
We can move forward with this next generation, but we need them to understand that the American dream is very much alive and well, because we, the people, hold the power to decide our future. And North Carolina may very well decide who wins this election.
Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Illegal immigration is one of the most controversial issues in this election. Some Americans in the battleground state of Arizona believe the border issue involves political manipulation and hope the next administration can balance security and essential civilian needs. Trevor Lee reports from Nogales, Arizona.
After about 3 hours of driving from Phoenix, Arizona's capital, the border appears ahead. On the two sides are Nogales, US and Nogales, Mexico. These twin border cities used to have frequent north-south interactions.
Every day, anytime, every time. Yeah, they come to buy things at the stores and food and everything. Then many people from here going to shopping over there because they're different of the dollar and peso.
Besides crossing the border for groceries and daily necessities, there are also cross-border students. This is also the most important port for Mexican agricultural exports to the US, accounting for 37% of the total volume. However, the main street of Nogales has become quieter. Evan Corey's family has been doing business in Nogales since his grandfather's generation. He says life and business have become more difficult in recent years due to politics.
Well, I think that everyone's talking about the border, and you hear that almost every other sentence is about the border when they're campaigning.
During Trump's presidency, he took major action against illegal immigration, building border walls, strengthening law enforcement and penalties, emphasizing that border security affects the domestic economy and crime issues. And he took tough measures to solve these issues.
Much of it is exaggerated in terms of how extreme people talk about it. You know, it's like when you walk on Morley Avenue, you don't see violence, you don't feel like you're in danger.
He says in recent years, even Mexicans with valid visas face obstacles crossing the border, ultimately affecting basic civilian needs.
The rhetoric that he uses about closing the border is very misinformed. If people are crossing and it's easy and the wait times are not too strenuous, we have more shoppers and that equals a better economic impact, right?
Arizona is one of the 7 swing states and the only one bordering Mexico. Biden secured 11 electoral votes here back in 2020, marking the first time Arizona became a blue state since 1996. Trevor Lee, TVB News, Nogales.
Kemi Badenoch is the new Conservative leader of the UK, the first black woman to lead a major political group. The former Business and Trade Secretary won 57% of party members' votes. David Garrett reports.
Kemi Badenoch here as Business and Trade Secretary alongside Rishi Sunak, the man she replaces as Conservative leader. Sunak was unable to keep the Conservatives in power after defeat to Labour in July's election. Sunak stayed on until a new leader was chosen. Badenoch saw off nearest challenger Robert Jenrick when she claimed 57% of party members' votes. Now, as leader of the opposition party, she wasted no time in going on the offensive against Labour Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
To prepare over the course of the next few years for government, to ensure that by the time of the next election, we have not just a clear set of Conservative pledges that appeal to the British people, but a clear plan for how to implement them. A clear plan to change this country by changing the way that government works. The Prime Minister is discovering all too late the perils of not having such a plan. That huge job begins today.
The straight-talking 44-year-old was born and now lives in South London with Nigerian parents. She spent most of her childhood in Lagos in the West African country. A mother of 3, Badenoch has to try to unite the Conservatives, licking wounds after an election drubbing.
This is not just about the Conservative Party. It is about the people we want to bring back to the Conservative Party. It is about the people we need to bring into the Conservative Party. It is about what the Conservative Party needs to be over the next 5, 10 and 20 years. Our party is critical to the success of our country.
The right-of-centre party has been through leaders Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Sunak in under 2 years and is in need of a fresh approach, with far-right parties like Reform UK growing in strength. Badenoch fits the bill and says honesty with voters is at the heart of her manifesto.
The time has come to tell the truth, to stand up for our principles, to plan for our future, to reset our politics and our thinking, and to give our party and our country the new start that they deserve. It is time to get down to business. It is time to renew. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Badenoch walking into 10 Downing Street when the Tories were in power. She will hope to get back there and is poised to take on Starmer at the next election. David Garrett, TVB News.
The Israeli military says its naval forces have captured a senior Hezbollah operative in northern Lebanon during a special operation. Lebanese authorities say they are investigating whether Israel was behind the capture of a Lebanese sea captain in the town of Batroun. Closed-circuit TV footage shows soldiers walking and holding on to a person. An Israeli military official says the operative has been transferred to Israel and is being questioned. Lebanon's Minister of Public Works and Transport says the incident will be investigated. Meanwhile, satellite imagery and data collected by mapping experts show extensive destruction in 11 villages in southern Lebanon next to the Israeli border. The wiping out of villages has raised fears in Lebanon that Israel aims to establish a new buffer zone as it tries to push back Hezbollah. India has lodged a formal protest with Canada after Ottawa linked Indian Home Minister Amit Shah to attacks against 6 separatists on Canadian soil. India's Foreign Office called the allegations baseless and summoned Canadian representation after Shah's name was leaked to media. Canada says one of India's highest-profile politicians was behind violence and intimidation of some Sikhs, but have not provided full details. Relations between the two nations nosedived after prominent Sikh separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar was murdered last year. Ottawa said members of India's government had knowledge of that attack. India denied this. In Spain, the death toll from deadly floods that hit mostly the eastern Valencia region has risen to 214. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says dozens of people are still missing. 4 days since a tsunami-like wave of water tore through Spanish towns, rescuers and volunteers face a massive cleanup task. Most of the victims are from Valencia, with at least 60 in Porta, with local media is calling ground zero of the floods. As police and emergency workers continue the grim search for bodies, authorities appear overwhelmed by the size of the disaster. Sanchez says another 5,000 more soldiers and 5,000 more police are being sent to Valencia. Some 4,500 soldiers and civil guard personnel have already been deployed. Witnesses say the floods came out of the blue, and for hundreds of people, there was no time to escape. U.S. experts say China appears to be building a new type of aircraft carrier. Satellite imagery from this week shows a vessel with a large, open, flat top. It is under construction on Longshui Island in Guangdong Province. The boat is about 200 meters long and 40 meters wide. It's much smaller than China's previous naval aircraft carriers, even smaller than the Type 075 amphibious assault ships used by Beijing's Navy. Some experts suggest China may be building the world's first ostensibly civilian aircraft carrier as an oceanographic research vessel. Still ahead, lifeguards with fake credentials are said to be working at some swimming pools. The health chief talks about ways to improve the city's medical services. And the first ever bicycle festival in Shatin. Welcome back. A swimming pool management service contractor says there have been many uncertificated lifeguards available on the market in recent years, and some companies openly hire them. A lifeguard union says this will put the safety of swimmers in jeopardy. The Food and Environmental Hygiene Department has stepped up inspections and found no irregularities so far. Samantha Lee reports.
King is a lifeguard subcontractor for private swimming pools. He says in recent years, some in the industry have been using fake pool lifeguard credentials to hire unqualified people. The credentials, known as Pool Lifeguard Awards, consisting of pocket-sized certificates, are issued by the Hong Kong Life Saving Society. King said some groups in Telegram recruit lifeguards without a certificate for $50 per hour. He added that one company hires 30 to 40 uncertified lifeguards every day and earns up to $300,000 to $400,000 every month. He estimates that nearly one-third of the swimming pool contractors hire uncertified lifeguards in order to make huge profits. Apart from using fake pool lifeguard awards, some even borrow others' certificates to work as lifeguards. In June, the police arrested 4 people using others' certificates in Tin Shui Wai Kings Road Country Club. To become a lifeguard in a private swimming pool, people aged 15 or above must firstly obtain the life-saving bronze medallion and first aid certificate from designated organizations, then take an examination run by the Hong Kong Life-Saving Society. Nick Wu, a spokesman for the Hong Kong and Kowloon Lifeguards Union, says lifeguards are responsible for saving lives during critical moments. He thinks the use of fake qualifications is an insult to their professionalism and warrants a heavy penalty. The Food and Environmental Hygiene Department says a newly implemented licensing regulation requires swimming pools to show at the entrance information about the lifeguards' photos, names, and the numbers of their pool lifeguard awards. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Chief Executive John Lee's policy address proposes to improve the city's medical services, including fee adjustments. Speaking with TVB News, Secretary for Health Lo Chung-Mao said there won't just be price hikes to prevent abuse, but also more subsidies for patients with severe illnesses. Private medical services will also be mandated to step up transparency in pricing. Jackie Lin spoke with the health chief.
The government's policy blueprint has spotlighted the need to reform Hong Kong's medical system. Speaking with TVB News, Secretary for Health Professor Lo Chung-Mao said these shakeups could be on the way.
So we know that the medical expenses in public hospitals are now currently heavily subsidized by the government at 97% of the cost. What is the direction now that the government wants to, adjust the medical fees?
In the fees review, which it should actually be a regular exercise. It should be done every 2 years. Services which are likely to be subjected to misuse or abuse, especially those minor illnesses, we may consider upward adjustment. But on the other hand, self-finance item, the cancer drugs are really expensive. Some patients may have to pay way over $30,000, $40,000 a month for these expensive medication. So we'll be considering how to make a more targeted subsidy for these patients.
Some acute conditions like cancer you mentioned are pretty clear-cut. But what about some other ailments that might not be as clearly defined as acute conditions? Will there be an appeal mechanisms for these people or patients?
We'll be enhancing this mechanism to make sure that these people who are underprivileged with financial difficulties, especially when they come to a serious illness with a very expensive hospital bill, we will be able to provide them with more subsidy.
The government also sets sights on ratcheting up transparency in private healthcare service pricing to remedy what he calls public-private polarization of medical fees.
What we are seeing is that in the public sector is super cheap, the waiting time is unduly long, whereas in the private sector, the price sometimes is really difficult to guess, and a lot of people would dare not use the private service, even if they have certain healthcare insurance, like the voluntary insurance scheme. So what we are trying to do is, of course, is to try to make sure that these two tracks are on a parallel track, and to make sure that our citizens can have access to both.
The voluntary scheme for private hospitals to provide pricing estimation started in 2016. Lo said the next step is to make the practice mandatory for better fee transparency. They also aim to roll out community pharmacies across all 18 districts in Hong Kong by 2026. Now the government will work out the drug formulary with strategic procurements of medicine, including those that treat chronic illnesses, with digital system upgrades in dispensing medicine and more collaboration with elderly care homes. Jacqueline, TVB News.
The first ever bicycle festival in Sha Tin took place this morning. Almost 700 cyclists joined the event. Mimo Singhai reports.
The festival kicked off at 6:30 a.m. with elite cyclists from the professional category. Athletes gathered around the Yunwo playground, the starting and ending point for all 11 races on the day. Riders had to cycle around Shengmu River, the landmark of Sha Tin. An accident on the first lap of a professional race, some bikers fell. While some managed to stand up after the fall, others lay on the ground. Paramedics appeared and offered assistance. A volunteer held up a yellow flag to warn other cyclists to be careful when they raced past the accident scene. Despite the interruption, cyclists who had finished their races said the experience was enjoyable.
The road condition is quite good. Hong Kong team members in the race, so it's fun.
Some said the weather played a part in their performance.
It was so cool, not so hot, not so wet, so we can do well in the contest.
Speaking to the media in the afternoon, the Hong Kong Flash Exchange Association, one of the organizers, said 9 men and 2 women were injured during the event. Daniel Chan, a Sha Tin district councillor, said organizers had initially expected around 300 people to sign up for the festival. He said they were pleasantly surprised to see that almost 700 people turned up.
I believe a lot of people, including residents in Sha Tin and even a lot of cycling enthusiasts, may like to have another year coming for the event. So we are going to plan to organize another cycling festival in the near future.
Meanwhile, several gaming booths were put up for people to get involved, including mini golf.
Residents can also try out another symbolic sport of the Sha Tin district by trying out this dragon boat rowing machine. Mimo Singhai, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.